Hi everybody, welcome to Book Talk and Book Tasting with Christian and Leah.
Today we're going to be discussing a book that both Christian and I read called The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth. And we're also going to give you a taste of some books that are similar to hers in case you want to check those out. All the books we're going to discuss today are books we have here in the library or on our Cloud Library app or Libby and Overdrive. First, we kind of want to give you a little introduction about the author. A.J. Hackworth also writes sci-fi romance and under Ada Harper. The book she wrote today is going to be fantasy. She is a speculative fiction writer who also writes contemporary fantasy. Her writing has appeared in Uncanny Magazine and other anthologies, and she's an alumni of Viable Paradise Workshop.
Okay, so now I guess we can start jumping to our book discussion. So the first question I kind of want us to talk about today to Leah is, what did you like best about this book?
So I kind of like the premise of the story. So the Library of the Unwritten is it's about all these books that are in a library in hell, and they're unfinished works of art or of literature. So either the author has come up with an idea and they haven't written the book yet, or something's happened to the author and for some reason the book just never got finished. I also like there's characters within these books that sometimes come to life, and the librarian in this series, she kind of has to go chase them, and she ends up going on an adventure to find this missing book that's supposedly something that the devil or Satan had written. She refers to him as Lucifer a lot, and the premise is interesting, but I do have to say that the beginning starts out strong, and then she does a lot of switching back and forth between the characters. Each chapter has a different character speaking, and it kind of gets confusing a little bit and muddled within everything. So towards the middle, it kind of slows down and it goes back and forth a lot, and the end, it ramps back up.
I can honestly say that I agree with you on I like the premise of the book. I think the premise is very, very interesting. And that one of the things that I was listening to a podcast that interviewed the author of this book, and they were saying that one of the things that where she got some of her idea from too is that she's also was writing her first novel. And so I like the idea of having the books that are there in that library be like unfinished works, because sometimes as a writer, there are so many pieces that you work on and that they kind of might end up where you don't finish. And so I thought that aspect of it was interesting. I did also like the places that they traveled to or that they went to.
Because they kind of went to like different realms, like Valhalla,
right.
And then somewhere towards the end of the book, they go to another realm that's kind of died off because there's no worshipers or believers in that realm anymore.
Yeah, I like that idea of the different realms, because it was almost like this journey that they went on to each of those different places. So I did like that. Now, there's some things that I didn't like.
Which leads into our
next question. There were some things that I didn't like about the book. One, I did feel that it jumped around extremely, way too much, and I feel like it could have been shorter. I feel like for the premise, she could have gotten her point across with it not being as long. Or if you were going to do this same premise, maybe do it as a book of short stories or something like that, because I think with it going back and forth and going from so many different characters' perspective, I think it did get very confusing at some points.
I agree with you. It could have been shorter. She started out really strong in the beginning, and even the title and the cover kind of pulls you in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, she goes back and forth so much between characters, and even some of the characters, I don't necessarily see why they have their own individual chapter and point of view.
Right.
because they have such a small role within the book.
Right.
And there was really no lead up between the chapters
Right.
to give you warning that they were going to switch perspectives.
Right.
So I listened to the audio version. Unfortunately, we don't have the audio version here at the library. We do have the ebook on Cloud Library. And it did get confusing for me going back and forth and her switching. And she even had quotes in the beginning of every chapter.
I didn't get that.
And she didn't say, like, you didn't know who was talking. You thought she'd say the name of the chapter and then go into this quote. So when you're listening to it, you're like, okay, so it's this person talking. But then eventually I caught on that no, it's not that character talking, it's something totally different.
Well, the thing that you'll notice, like in the ebook version too, as you're reading it, those quotes are there, and then it's like so-and-so librarian from 1894, BE, CE, or whatever, and it says that, and then you have that character's, whatever character she's talking about in that chapter, their name is listed, so it is confusing because the quotes almost somewhat don't have anything to do with the chapter.
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like, I also feel like too, this is one of the books that you probably, if you want to read it, you may need to just read it.
Yeah,
like,
instead of listening to it.
Instead of listening to it, and I also feel like it's one of those that you also need to take like 3 or 4, maybe 5 days and read it and not read anything else. Because I think if you are doing other things or reading other things and you come back to this one, you're going to be extremely confused.
Because I think you were reading multiple books.
I was reading
this one.
I know, I was like reading 3 or 4 books and then trying to read this book too, and I was just kind of like, every time I would go back, I'm like, what is happening? Like, I don't understand, like, I think I missed something, and so I would go back and kind of try to reread, because it does bounce around so much. And then, like you said, I agree with you that there are some characters that I feel like didn't need to speak, like they didn't have to have like a whole chapter because they weren't important, and I feel like it was taking too long to get to the final thing that needed to be done. I think instead of making it so drawn out and taking those breaks and having those like chapters of characters that shouldn't, not saying that they didn't matter, but that they shouldn't have been.
They weren't as important.
They weren't as important to the
a
story.
main character.
Right, and so I feel like had she taken some of those out, I feel like it would have flowed a little bit better. And now the cover is very creepy. Because I guess when you're looking at like the ebook version of it, everything looks so small.
Yeah, so we didn't realize until we had this one up that it was
it's very, very eerie. It's got one of those where like it's like the hand, and it's like if you really pay attention to like the fingernails, it's almost like the person was clawing for dear life. And so it's
get
like,
out the book.
yes, so it's like very, very creepy. So what other books do you think that this book reminded you of?
So I think one book that it reminded me of, and this kind of goes into our portion of, some of our recommendations, would be, let me pick one. The 10,000 Doors of January by Sarro. We have a physical copy of this book and an ebook. This is a tale of impossible journeys, unforgettable love, and enduring power of stories. So this is kind of similar to the Unwritten Library, just because all the characters in this book are on a journey to find this one specific book. I don't want to give too much away in case you do want to read this, and this is our hope that you will find some of these books interesting and maybe check them out and see what they're about. And don't let us deter you from reading the Unwritten Library. This is just our opinion of it. It did have some good aspects. Because the Claire, the main librarian in the library of the Unwritten, she goes on a journey with a bunch of colleagues to find this missing book. So I think that the 10,000 Doors of January, that reminds me, there's a similarity there. It also has love in it, which the book we read by A.J. Hapwith does have some romance in it.
Right.
And then the enduring power of stories. There are multiple things you find out about the characters. Unfortunately, you don't find out much about the characters in the unwritten library until towards the end, which I wish you kind of like knew more before that point.
I also wonder too if, because there is a sequel to this, there's a second book in the series. I wonder if she does if she goes into more detail about some of the characters that she mentions. What I thought was interesting too is that she fell in love with a character that she created. So I think that aspect of it is interesting too. I think that there were so many characters in the book that I had more questions about, that I wanted to learn more about, and not just like these small snippets of. And I also wanted to get to know some of the characters that were jumping out of some of the books. Throughout the book, I wanted to get to know the damsels and the heroes and the villains, and get a chance to see. I think that there should have been more towards that too, because I know that in the interview that she's done, that she did talk about how her first thought was thinking of what kind of books would go into this type of library, what would be a part of that collection. And so I think that that's interesting, that I would love to hear more about some of the characters that jumped out of a lot of the books.
And kind of the librarians in this book, they end up being authors that didn't finish their story. So some of their works are within this library, and you later find out something that Claire, the main character, goes through with one of her books. And in the beginning, she also has to go and find an escaped character from one of the books in the unwritten library. And that kind of leads into her journey looking for this other book. But you notice that in this library, if the characters awaken and they escape the book, which I like that theory, that's very interesting and a different take, that the characters in this library can come alive and wake up. They venture to go find their creator, their author, if they're still living, which they don't want to happen. Do you want to go into kind of why you don't want to meet?
Because there's this big chance that you could fall in love with your creator, or even, especially you can drive them. I think you could kind of drive them mad if you try to push your creator to finish the book, because I think one of the characters, that was his goal, was to get his creator to go and finish, and they said that it'll throw everything off if you go and you approach this person. You can make them go crazy, or they end up deciding they don't want to write and they never finish the story. And that's the opposite of what the escaped character wants. But I also find that's interesting too, coming from looking at it from a writer's perspective, because I think when you have those pieces and things that you write about, or ideas that you have and that you aren't able to come back to them, how they do always kind of gnaw at you. So I think that that's interesting, and it's a similar situation where you have like characters that you've written about that are coming back now and they want to seek you out to finish the work. So I think I thought that was interesting too.
So don't forget to comment, let us know you're watching, and if you have any questions, post them in the comment and we'll answer those for you. What's the book that reminded you of the Library of the Unwritten?
Well, I have one right here, and that's The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep by H.G. Perry. We do have a physical copy here at the library, and it's about a young scholar with the power to bring literary characters into the world. So that goes along with the literary characters jumping out of unfinished works in the Library of the Unwritten. So I thought that was very similar to what we've been reading.
Another one I think that's very similar is How Rory Thorne Destroyed the Multiverse by Kate Eason. We do have a physical copy here, and it's actually not one of the copies standing up. I have the book right here. And this is kind of about a reimagining of familiar fairy tale tropes and a story of resistance and self-determination. So this, the Library of the Unwritten is kind of similar because you go to, various religions have their own idea of hell or heaven.
Right.
And they kind of venture through those, like they go to Valhalla.
Yes.
And they end up going to this one, which I don't remember if they ever specifically mentioned the one that they go to, where the worshippers are no longer around. So the god in that realm has died.
And so they never actually say, I don't think she ever says where it is, or what realm that is, or if the realm even has like a name. I think it's just, they talk about it, and it is very, very sad, I guess. That's one aspect of it I found. I thought that was very sad because I kept thinking, like, what realm is this? But yeah, that's the realm.
And there's also, within the Library of the Unwritten, a part that goes good versus evil.
Yes.
So that they have heaven, and then, the librarians from hell trying to get Lucifer's book.
Right.
And then you see, every book has that good versus evil.
Yes.
And then the Library of the Unwritten kind of brings that in with, Christianity and stuff, and heaven and hell, and how they're always at each other.
Right.
So it that was interesting as well.
Yeah, and the battles that they have in there are they're very interesting. Them coming together and fighting to get these pages that are missing and trying to gain all these pages, and they have a lot of sneaky stuff that they do in there to try to get those pages back to them. What feelings do you think that this book did? What feelings did this book evoke for you? You think?
I think at reading just the synopsis of it, I was excited at first because I was like, oh, we're librarians, so this sounds interesting, and it had a different take on the story. I've never come across a story quite like this one with the ideas that they instilled in it. But then once I got towards the middle, I almost wanted to stop listening. I got bored, but I was determined to finish it. Usually when I get bored with a book, I will not finish it. But for this instance, since we wanted to talk about it and, review it, I was determined to do so. And then it kind of ramped up and got more exciting, but not necessarily as exciting as I would have liked. All the action was packed in the end.
Right.
And so, that was exciting, but I wish that more of that was sprinkled throughout the middle, or they would have made the book shorter, like you had mentioned earlier.
Right. I feel like I was very excited when I first started it, because I kept thinking, wow, this is interesting, this is something that I could really get into. And so I was really excited, and then when I got to the middle, honestly, I was like, I'm done with this. Where I was like, I'm so done with this right now. And then I would pick it back up, and then I'll be like, this is interesting. I had those moments of confusion sometimes because I didn't know, it kept jumping so much.
Yeah.
But then, close, like you said, at the end, it does get action-packed. So then there's that excitement again. Because then you're like, okay, what's next? What's happening next? And
then you're learning more about the characters, because she saved that more towards the end.
Yes, she didn't hit it. I wish she had sprinkled it, I agree with you, sprinkled it throughout, because I think it would have helped everything make sense. And I think that middle part was it was one of those things where I felt like I needed coffee and I needed to be really, really alert so that I could really, really get into it. So that's why I said at the beginning that it was one of those books that I felt like if you're going to read it, it is something that you need to read. You need to kind of sit down and read so you can get a chance to feel all of those elements and really get a chance to really understand the characters and the reasoning behind some of their actions throughout the book. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But it is one of those that I feel like I'm definitely going to finish.
Yeah.
And get a chance to.
I feel like, typically me, for instance, the Stephen King book, he goes so much back and forth between characters is one of the reasons I struggle personally to read books like that. And this book kind of reminds me of that, because there is so much back and forth.
There's so much back and forth, there's so much going on, and I think when it's done well, it's easier to understand. I think maybe if she might have broke it into, like, maybe put it in major sections and did it that way, that it would have, like, flowed better. But I also think that she wanted to give all of those characters, like, a voice. And I think that's the main thing. And a lot of writers do feel that they want to give each character a voice to tell their story. But like I said, I think it just could have been shorter. I think it could have been a lot shorter and not longer.
Because it was almost 400 pages.
Yes, it's almost 400 pages. And it's one of those that I will say, I don't know if I would read the second one. I would have to kind of like flip through.
I almost want to, since I did finish the book, I almost want to read the second one and see like if her writing had changed any.
And it may.
And like she had any growth, because I believe you had said this was
This is actually I think this
book.
is the first one. And I think that will grow. I also would want to read some of the other books that she's written under her pseudonym, under Ada Harper. I kind of would like to see how she does, like, writing in a different type of genre. I think the second one is one of those I would have to flip through, and I'm pretty sure, because it's the first time that you do something, of course the next time does get better sometimes.
You're always learning.
You're still learning, so I also think that would be something. I think I would want to see what happens at the end and how she sets the second one up.
And we mentioned on this that for writing, her writing style almost reminded us. We kept going back and forth on, is this young adult? Is it adult fiction?
I was very confused. I was very confused because there were times that I feel like this is a young adult novel. I feel like it was, but then there will be like terminology, things that she would say that I'm like, okay, no, it's not. And so I was very like confused a little bit.
And I think she more advertises it as adult fiction.
Yes. But I also noticed too, like when we were searching for books, that it's also listed with some young adult books. So that's why I think I was like confused too. But yeah, I think it is more. It's definitely more an adult book.
Yes. I think another book that's similar to this one is Upright Women Wanted by Sarah Daley, and we have a physical copy of that book right here. This one is about a woman trying to outrun an arranged marriage. The main character, Esther, hides herself in the librarian's book wagon, and the librarian she is traveling with have a secret. I don't want to give too much away about this book because it does sound interesting. In this book, the librarians kind of distribute propaganda, and the main character Esther kind of finds out that they're against her dad because Esther's dad is one of the higher ups in this new post-apocalyptic time period. So I think it's very similar because it also has librarians in here, and it shows them in another light.
Right.
They're kind of like rebels, and I feel like Claire in the Library of the Unwritten was a little bit of a rebel as well, because you find out reading it that she helped her love, which was one of her characters that she created, escape the library.
Yes, and she actually created her character into someone that she wanted to be like so bad. Like she literally wanted to be this very independent person and this very confident person, and so she created this person here, and this person is who she fell in love with, and she did help her, escape the Library of the Unwritten, which cost her a lot because she ended up doing other things in order to help her escape. It's almost like, kind of like being a spy, which reminds me of one of the other books that we have that are similar to the Library of the Unwritten, and it's called The Invisible Library by Genevieve Kaufman. And we have a physical copy and also an ebook copy here in the library. And it's a story about a world where librarians are spies and the clock is ticking to find a dangerous book. So again, there's that journey to find a dangerous book. So it's very similar to the Library of the Unwritten. If you had a chance to meet A.J. Hackett, what is a question that you would ask her?
That's a good question. question, Christian. I think I would ask her why she made her book the length it was.
Right.
Because we both stated that we feel like it could have been shorter. Like she almost like, I think you had discussed this with me, where
she had a page
she had
limit
a page
set.
or a word limit that she was trying to reach, so that's why it was so long.
Right. I would also ask her, where did she really, and I know this question has been asked of her before, and she really didn't fully answer it, you know, but I would wonder where the premise came from, and where did she get her, where did the idea come from, and how long did it get her to just really come out with this storyline,
Like
this
came
plot?
off the ideas,
Yeah.
the characters, you know, the storyline.
Because it's an incredible premise. It's very, very interesting. But I also kind of like, what made you just decide to do it about unwritten works and not?
Because I would think that, like, being a library in hell, it would not be unwritten works in hell. It would be something.
Because that's all. It's almost like it's a bad thing that something is unwritten and that it's not finished.
Yeah.
And so I would think that was more being in limbo than actually just being one way. So I wonder what made her really narrow down that choice to make it the library of the unwritten and not make it the library of terrible books, or you know what I mean, anything like that. But I would want to know, like, really how she narrowed down that premise for this series, because she's actually working on a third one, so there will be three
So
in this series.
Unless she decides to do more than 3 books.
Really, with the world that she's built in this first one, she actually could keep going. Not going to the point to where it's like 30 or 40 of them, but like I feel like she could probably squeeze 5 or 6 out of this series, because I think that the world that she has created is so big that she has that option to really make it bigger and extend the series with the characters that she has in the book.
Another book I think that is similar to this is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. We have a physical copy of the book, an ebook, and an e-audio book. She's the same author that did The Night Circus, if you're familiar with that. This is a book about various tunnels and rooms filled with stories. And Zachary Ezra Rollins, which is the main character, is on an adventure to find his, even though he doesn't realize it. So he's on a journey to find his story.
Right.
And this, in the Library of the Unwritten, it's a library full of, unfinished works, but they have various stories along them. Right. And even the main characters, you find out going along that they're each on their own individual adventure. Right. About kind of like self-discovery. Right. Because Claire towards the end learned some things about herself that she didn't realize.
I agree with that. It's similar to this book also. We have this copy too, a physical copy as well. Well, the physical copy called Tuesday Mooney Talks to Ghosts by Philia. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. And it's a tale about a cast of dreamers and rivals and one woman going on a citywide treasure hunt. So again, you have that. All of these books kind of lead into some kind of treasure hunt to locate something or find something, that journey. And then it's always like a group of characters, or a cast of characters that take these journeys. So this is very similar to the Library of the Unwritten, because you have Claire, you have Leto, you have Hero, Brevity, and you have all of these people.
You even find out you meet death in it and you didn't realize it was.
Yes. And so you get a chance to see all of these mishaps, these big characters that are going all these different places and searching and working together to end in a common goal. So I think that that's interesting, and that's one of the reasons why that book is also similar to.
Let's go back to a question. Mm-hmm. Which characters in the book did you like best?
I like Claire because I really thought that she has this wit that's very, very, she's very quick and very, she's also an interesting character, and I also see her as being a strong female character in the book, and I always like that. I'm a big fan of that. And she's also very, she also has like this torture kind of spirit thing kind of going on too, that's also very interesting. And I also did like Brevity, the little bit that I did see. I thought she was also very interesting, and I wish that the author did elaborate a little bit more on her, because I think that she was an interesting enough character that she could have been added a little bit more.
Well, she was my favorite character, actually. Because of the fact she reminded me a little bit of myself. Like,
Right.
she is very unsure of herself, and she's a muse.
Yeah.
So she's supposed to inspire people. I don't agree that this is part of myself, but she got kicked out of muse school because she kept some inspiration for herself.
Right.
But in the fact that, she gets anxious in certain situations, but then she ends up eventually overcoming those and becoming a stronger person. Brevity, in the beginning she's happy-go-lucky, but towards the end, you see she has to struggle because she comes in charge of the library, and there's a battle towards the end for the library, and she's having to try and, protect this, and she doesn't believe in herself, and then all of a sudden she comes up with this plan, and she's determined, like, hey, I'm going to be a librarian, I'm in charge of this library, I'm going to protect it. And I think because at the end she does become something more of a main character, we will see her more in the second book, because the way they leave it off, I don't want to give away the ending, but the way they leave it off, they leave it for her and Claire are going to be two major components.
And I like that idea too, because I think they both work so well together in the book. I feel like they both, I really would have liked just to see them kind of just take the journey. Even though there were some of the other characters that I did like, I still would have just liked to see them kind of, because I think with those two characters, they have such a good relationship, such a good like rapport back and forth, that I think that it probably would have carried the story a lot further, and it would have probably made it a lot more interesting, because I do like, those were my two favorite characters, those two, and their interaction.
Let's see, so another book that was similar to Library of the Unwritten was Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. We have a physical copy of the book right here. This book was a story about a thief who steals a powerful artifact, but now someone else has set their eyes on it, and you have to follow I'm going to butcher this name, Seneca, as she makes new allies and learns to harness the power for herself. So the similarities with this book, I think, is that, it's the main character comes in touch or comes to hold this powerful artifact. And then you find out other people want this artifact for themselves, which there's a character in the Library of the Unwritten that you find out with this book that they're searching for. You find out towards the end he wants that book or those missing pages for himself. And then, Claire and all the other characters kind of have to rebel against this person and make allies and learn the power to harness the power for themselves.
Which it reminds me too of this book, This Is How You Lose the Time Worm, by Amal El Mahtar. And we have the physical copy and an audiobook copy, and it's a book about a post-apocalyptic world where two rivals from opposing factions must find a way to survive. While if their bond is discovered, it could be the end. And so again, you have this idea of people bonding together and having to fight a greater evil or a bigger problem, however you want to kind of look at it. So I also think that that's really, really interesting. That it does, because in the Library of the Unwritten, you have that same thing where a lot of the searching for this book and searching for this piece is for survival. So I also think that that's an interesting aspect too, because especially with everything that goes on sometimes, that survival is the most important thing.
Yes.
And so you see that a lot in a lot of these books, is that they're taking these journeys for a reason, and those journeys are to survive in some way, shape, or form.
Because in the library that I've written, Claire is a soul, and you have to have special permissions to leave hell. And if they have it, what is it called, like a ghost light,
Yes.
if that runs out, then, the hellhounds come after them,
Which
and then they disappear.
And they chase them. It's an experience. One of the other things too is that you do have, like, the hellhounds do chase them quite a bit in some sections of the book, and then also just traveling to all these different places and getting into all of these other battles where you literally you see some of the characters literally having to sacrifice themselves sometimes in order to gain survival or to help the group as a whole, which also, this also reminds me of another book that we have in our collection, and it's called Ink and Bone by Rachel Payne, and we do have a physical copy of it here, and it's a world where the Great Library controls the flow of knowledge, but Jess Brightwell gains the majority of his off of the black market. So he's poised to enter the library service he is sent to spy. Follow Jess as he learns about the Great Library and the secrets it hides. So again, you have that aspect of libraries hiding secrets and they're not really hiding secrets, but there are jewels to be found.
They have the knowledge.
They have the knowledge, and they have these artifacts and things that you can go and you can find and you can look at, which to me is like the true essence of a library, because you come to a library to gain that knowledge and to learn more and to find books that you may not have ever even heard of, or things that you might want to really read, your next great book. So it's just the true essence of what libraries are.
And then lastly, for kind of like the books part, AJ Hackwith does have a recommendation, and we have this book, a physical copy and an ebook, called Mexican Gothic by Philia, Moreno, Garcia.
And it is new. It just came out this year.
And same with Unwritten Library. I believe it came out last year.
Yes. And there is, like you said, there's a second part of the series, and she is working on a third one. And I think the podcast that I listened to might have been from earlier this year. So I think that third novel might be in just like it's not published yet. She's working on it.
If you could hear the same story from another person's point of view, who would you choose?
Who would I choose? I would want to hear from George R.R. Martin. I really would, because for some reason, with some of the battle scenes in this book, I kept thinking of like Game of Thrones. So I kind of want to I would want to see what he would do with this premise, because I think he would probably build the world a lot bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
he does build big immersive world.
Yes, so I would like to hear it in his way. What about you?
I don't know if I have an author I would like to have do it, but like I would like to hear it from a different character's point of view. Like she does go, each chapter has a different character that's speaking, but I would have liked it to be like more of, and we've mentioned this, like more of certain characters.
Right.
Like maybe, I know every author right now is doing books about, like, say, Midnight Sun has come out from the Twilight series, from Edward's point of view.
I'm sorry. I hope that she doesn't do that, because I would feel like I'm hearing the same story, but just in a different voice. And I think that unless there's like, and I haven't read Midnight Sun yet. I want to, but I feel like if you rewrite a story in a different voice, I hope that there's like more background information.
Well, I would like the trees, maybe.
Yes.
That was Claire's person that her character she created, or even hero.
Right.
Because you find out more about him later on, and you find out he's not really a hero per se.
I feel like I would also like to see this author too. I would like to see her do a book where she talks about the characters that are coming from the unwritten books. Because when
she briefly touches on them.
I would like to see maybe a full-fledged book where that's in the voices of those characters and their experience. Because when we first talked about doing this book, I remember thinking like, hey, this is going to be interesting because it does talk about how the characters jump out a lot, you know, from these unwritten works. But I would like to hear more from their voices because I think the damsels like section of the library was like really interesting. The heroes and like you said, the villains. I would like to hear from some of those characters.
Well, sorry to interrupt. Even at the end library, you find out the library is actually alive.
Right.
And like all the characters in the end come out to help the library. And, you know, just finding out more about those characters.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like she doesn't have to touch on each one, and maybe she'll see this, and maybe she'll get this whole idea. But she doesn't have to touch on each one, but I would like to see her at least really dig in deeper into some of those characters that were unwritten, that were jumping from these books. I would like to see more about Hero, and more about, is it Beatrice? Beatrice, and then more about some of the other, characters that were jumping out of the book. I have a question for you.
Oh no.
So, thinking about the Library of the Unwritten, what songs or what group do you hear? Like, you know how when you read a book sometimes and you have like this idea of like music or you hear music? What playlist or what group would you?
I would like My Chemical Romance to be doing this. Because they're very theatrical.
Right.
And I feel like some instances in this it is very theatrical. And so I think of their music. As for anyone else, theirs who pops in my head immediately.
I want to tell you, there's one group and one artist that pops in my head when I think of this book, and I don't know why, it just hit me too. Linkin Park and Little Nas X for some reason. Like I don't know why. I kind of feel like I hear him rapping a song that like and it's just maybe it's because I was listening to his new song probably a couple of days ago, and so I was thinking like, yeah, it pops in my head for some reason. I don't know. It'll probably hit me later. Why?
Probably.
In my head.
No, we should have said this.
We should have said this.
It's all about characters.
So, another question I have for you. Which character in the book would you like most to meet? If you could meet one of the characters.
You know, I think I would like to meet Hero.
He was interesting. He was very interesting.
He is very interesting, and if you choose to read this book, which we encourage you to do so, and if you do read it, you know, reach out to us, let us know what you think about it.
Right.
But you find out more about him, and I don't want to give too much away, but, you know, his name's a hero, he's supposed to be a hero, but you find some things out later in the book about him.
Sneaky.
And he's not your typical hero.
No.
He's very interesting, and you find out the longer he's out of his book, he's almost like us, you know, humans and individuals grow and change all the time, and he was starting to do that.
Right.
The longer he was out of his book, he couldn't even return to his book.
Right.
Because he had changed so much.
Right. Yeah, I like Hero. Again, you know who I would want to meet is Claire, because I have so many questions. Like all these questions about saving her character, and also all the things that she had to really do, like. And so I would ask her questions too about the tools that they had to carry, because I was like,
she carries a
satchel
with like an X-Acto knife.
Yes.
Which we, you know, as librarians, if we're having to fix a book, we
Right.
have to use the X-Acto knife and tape and stuff.
And all this good stuff. And then I also like to know like the cataloging process, and like
that would be interesting.
how she was really able to like send characters back, and
Because they almost have this interlibrary loan program.
Yes.
You know, we have here where we borrow books from other libraries, and they almost have that, and she ends up having to, like, they have the stamp that ties the character or the book to the librarian.
Right, so they can't really just like
Leave
leave
and
if
not
they
come
wanted
back.
to and not come back. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. So I would like to sit down maybe and have like get a chance to meet Claire and have a powwow about what's in that set that you have, like all these different things, like tape. What are you doing with that tape? Because even though we use those things every day here, she definitely uses them for different reasons. In the book.
In the beginning, when she's using an X-Acto knife, I was just like, oh, well, that's a different take for that.
There's some things like even when she like stamps the books, I'm like, yes, it's different than checking out a book is now it can't leave. So that's the whole purpose is when you check it out for it to leave, but it's very, it has a very different premise.
Well, I know, like, and I don't think we've really discussed this. A character I kind of have a love and hate relationship with is Anders.
Yes, I don't like
he's kind of interesting because he has these smart quips.
Yes, I think he's funny. Like I thought, like when I read his character and read a couple of the chapters and learning about him, I thought he was very funny, but I also thought he's no good. Like he is bad.
The author makes you like him in the beginning, but
yes.
you're wary of him.
Right.
Because he's over a different part of the wing of the library. I can't think of the name of it offhand, but it's for darker, items and artifacts that kind of have to be kept under lock and key.
Right.
And you start to kind of like him, but then as they're going on their adventure, because he goes along with Claire, you kind of start to question him with some of the things he does, and then in the end you find out that he's no good.
Right.
So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with him.
I kind of do too. There were moments where I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of funny, he's okay. But then there were those parts where he would do something and it'd be very like despicable or be really like horrible, and you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
terrible, it's terrible.
You're like, why did he do that?
Yeah, so he's one of the characters I agree with you 100% that I kept kind of going back and forth with a lot, because there were just so many aspects of him that I felt like were kind of scary and kind of leery, that you didn't really want to like trust him in so many different ways, and so I had those moments.
Is there anything else you would like to touch base on within the Library of the Unwritten?
Again, like I said, I know it sounds, sometimes I sound like, oh, no, well, definitely read it, and actually really get a chance to kind of sit down and see if you agree or disagree with us, or if you may really enjoy it. And I would definitely finish the series. I would definitely read both books, because I think that you'll get a chance to really see the bigger picture.
Because I do think she's going to expand upon it more in the
Right.
second book. And as I've mentioned earlier, you find out that brevity does get a bigger role. So, we both like brevity.
Right.
So I think we'll learn more about her.
Right.
And Leto as well.
Right. I think, and I just think you'll get like just a bigger, like the full picture by reading both. And they're not like, it's a pretty quick read too. It's not a bad read. It's just, it is a little bit long.
And sometimes
you'll have those spaces, but I think that if you really stick with it, it's one of those things that you'll enjoy. Like, and then you can definitely go back and kind of question some of the different aspects of it.
Yeah, and then, all these books here we've mentioned, we do have available for you to check out. So if any of them sounded interesting, don't hesitate, to reach out to us, either Leah, or Christian, and we can point you in the right direction to get these books checked out.
We'll post a list later too.
Yeah, we can post a list later of them as well, and you can put a hold on them even if you'd like. What do y'all, as an audience, do y'all have any book recommendations for us? Any items you'd like us to add to the collection? What have you been reading? Do you have, has anyone read this book? if so, we'd like to hear your thoughts about that. And also, you know, do you have suggestions for things you want us to read and cover? Don't be afraid to post those answers in the comments, and then we can get back with you. Have we had any questions or any comments for us?
We haven't had any, but we've had some join us today, and they seem pretty interested in it, so... It sounds like a really interesting book. Even I want to read it.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, like I said, it is on Cloud Library as an ebook. We don't have the audio version, but if anyone's interested in that, we can certainly mention it to our acquisitions librarian, Josh, and see about him purchasing a physical copy or even an audiobook copy for y'all to check out. We don't want it to deter you from being able to read this if you don't want to read the ebook version.
We can interlibrary loan it.
Or we can interlibrary loan it as well.
While we're waiting for our copy.
Yes. I want to thank everyone for joining. Me and Christian and myself, we've had fun with this.
Right.
And we also plan on doing another one in January. We'll be covering the marriage game.
Yes.
And this will be a romance, and it'll be leading up to our blind date with a book starting the whole month of February.
So definitely come and check us out again, because I will say you're going to have an interesting conversation about the covers of romance novels right now.
We've already been discussing, so I think it's going to be a fun, interesting conversation.
Yes.
We could spend quite a bit of time just discussing the covers of romances right now.
So definitely come back and see us and let us know if we can help you in any way.
Thank you.
Thank
you
you
for tuning in.
Have
Have
a
a good
good day.
weekend.